Roses are red, violets are blue.
お前はもう死んでいる。
Hey guys, I know it's been a while since I last posted a video and I wanted to thank people for sticking around. I have a really good reason for why it's been taking so long. I've been a lazy shit. If you look at Tahm Kench's win rate before the 20-minute mark, he starts off with a 60% win rate but declines to 43% after the 40-minute mark. This means it's crucial you win the early game because if you fail early on, it only gets worse from there. So try to perfect your early game and get comfortable with all the matchups, especially against your counters. Hey guys, today I'm going to teach you how to be a burden on society. I mean, how to play Tahm Kench.
Call me king, call me demon. Water forgets the names of the drowned.
At level 1, you want to take Q. At the start of the game, rush to the bush closest to the enemy turret and wait. If you happen to encounter enemy, run them over because Tahm Kench has one of the strongest level 1s thanks to the crowd control from his empowered Q and empowered auto attacks from his passive. To maximize damage, use your auto attacks first and save your Q until you apply 3 stacks because the stun your empowered Q provides lets you sneak in additional auto attacks. Saving your Q until 3 stacks will also deal more damage because your passive also increases the damage of your abilities based on how many stacks the enemy has. Doing this correctly against the average solo queue player will get you a kill, a flash, or both.
Say hello to my little friend!
At level 2, you want to take W. In a skirmish, your aim should be applying 3 stacks with a mix of Qs and auto attacks as soon as possible. Because you now have your W for crowd control, you can either start off with mid-range Q and run after them to auto attack, or use your Q at point blank range so you can land your auto attacks easier. Naturally, it's still good to Q stun and sneak in a few auto attacks before your W, but in the early trades after level 1, it's harder to get a Q stun unless the enemy hard commits to a fight like this Jace did. Use your W to reposition the enemy into your incoming minion wave, or put them into a tower range so they'll take turret damage and you'll also be in range for a few more auto attacks. If they try to hide inside a minion wave and you can't Q them, running straight at them works because they assume they were safe and you can catch them off guard this way. In that scenario, it's the same combination of auto attacks and abilities. Apply 3 stacks any way possible, Q stun if it's not on cooldown and you're confident in landing it, auto attack once if you landed the stun, then W to reposition them in your own minion wave. Against enemies with no dash or crowd control ability, you can auto attack twice during a point blank or mid-range Q stun and then devour as they attempt to leave your W range. A max range Q stun will only let you get 1 auto attack before you have to devour them because you waste most of the stun duration walking towards them. If you couldn't Q stun or weren't sure if it would hit, you can save your Q since your W stuns the target for a quarter of a second, guaranteeing a Q and a few auto attacks if they don't flash. With flash up, not only does the range of his abilities change since you can flash Q or flash W an enemy with 3 stacks to deal your full combo, but also the number of stacks you need to be threatening. Normally, Tahm Kench is most dangerous when he gets 3 stacks on an enemy since his abilities are empowered. With flash, you only need 2 stacks now since you can flash auto attack for the 3rd stack and Q stun or W to start the combo. If you're facing against a champion whose dash animation leaves them standing still for a few frames, wait for the animation of their dash to start so you can W them mid animation and cancel their escape ability. A more utility and support use with Tahm Kench's W is that it despawns point and click abilities like Tristana and Caitlyn's ultimates. If you time it right, you can save your allies while also putting your enemy's ability on cooldown. This also works on tower shots so long as the tower doesn't hit the ally in the middle of the devour animation. If your W is on cooldown, you can channel your ultimate so your targeted ally can also click on Kench to cancel the turret aggro.
You guys have fun. Help! Yeah, Ram, you bitch!
Moving on, there's a lot of stuff that isn't mentioned about Tahm's W that makes him feel clunky. Your W sometimes bugs if you devour a minion that dies to tower or minion damage in the middle of your devour animation and doesn't shoot it back out as a projectile. Using your ultimate puts your W on a 1-second cooldown after you blink to that location, and there's a half a second delay for each stack to finish applying, hence sometimes you devour other shit by accident. The most important one is the half a second delay because it's the reason why you sometimes devour a minion or ally when using W immediately after an auto attack to apply the 3rd stack. In this clip you can clearly see my cursor is hovering over Malphite as I click W. The reason behind this is because the enemy champion technically still has 2 stacks for half a second, making them not a viable target and causing the ability to shift to a target nearby that can be devoured. This is particularly bad if you eat your jungler during a counter gank since you waste your W and your jungler can't do damage while inside your stomach for 2 seconds. If both you and your jungler die because of this, you lost the entire laning phase, so wait for the stack to turn red on a champion before casting W.
I'm leaving. Yeah, bye, Draco.
Oh, my KDA! God damn it, baby!
She finds great pleasure in leaving you to die.
Anytime she can kill someone, dude, she just loves it.
At level 3, you want to take E. There are only 3 things to know for this ability. You can't use this W during any hard crowd control, except for roots. You don't want to let too much gray health stack before converting it into a shield, and you don't want to use your E, then W immediately afterwards, because the shield will vanish soon after you spit the enemy back out, and the enemy will likely kill you afterwards. In fact, the only time you would do this is if you are about to die from damage over time abilities, minion damage, or tower damage. In teamfights with a lot of crowd control, pop your shield when you have taken 60% of your current health, because if the enemy is smart and hits you with any crowd control when you're low, you won't be able to activate your shield at the last second. Try not to let the gray health stack up too much before you activate it, since converting 1000 gray health and only taking 500 damage is an overall waste, since some of that gray health could have slowly regenerated back into normal health. Same logic for tanking turrets, since you'll also end up with less health if you endlessly tank than if you shielded properly.
Go back to the shadow. You shall not pass!
From here on out, there are 2 viable skill paths. If you're laning against tanks with a lot of health or against teams that have priority targets, put 3 points into Q, max W, then finish maxing Q. If you're facing mobile bruisers that need to be slowed or immobile bruisers that rely on move speed, max Q, then max W. Regardless of the skill path, Tahm Kench's damage stagnates at level 13 since he has maxed both his Q and W and his passive doesn't change the overall damage by a significant amount.
Hey, got him. And we're gonna get the Drake, maybe, possibly.
What, you think? Wow, dude, come on!
Between the levels of 1 to 5, there are very few champions that can duel Tahm Kench, so play like a monkey to draw jungle pressure, especially if your jungler will be nearby at that time. In addition to having one of the strongest 1v1s, Tahm Kench also has one of the strongest 2v2s, since he can suppress an enemy for 2 seconds and then reposition that enemy into a more advantageous spot, allowing you and your ally to freely focus the isolated enemy 2v1. Even if you're ridiculously ahead, always respect an enemy laner that has an offensive ultimate once they hit 6. Tahm Kench's ultimate doesn't offer much to 1v1, so he doesn't change much while the enemy hits a major power spike. If you're facing a melee champion who doesn't have much roam potential or wave clear, setting up a freeze right outside your turret is great in the early game since you force the enemy to CS in a position that your jungler can easily gank. It also means you can cast W and spit the enemy into your turret range if they try to CS. You can set up a freeze by leaving 4 more full health minions right outside your turret and last hitting. Because they have more minions, your incoming minion wave is stalled at that position and eventually dies once the enemy reinforcements arrive. If you last hit, the wave starts to slow push towards the enemy, which is why the 4 additional minions are necessary to counter the gradual push. In this game, Malphite didn't push out the wave completely, which ended up leaving a perfect freeze right outside my turret for 2.5 minutes, denying him gold and EXP. When he stepped up to try to break the freeze, I got 3 stacks on him, W, and threw him into tower, eventually forcing him to back, and the freeze still wasn't broken for another 1.5 minutes. I ended up breaking the freeze by mistake, but managed to catch Malphite out before the wave officially broke, crashing the large minion wave that remained from the freeze into the enemy turret. This denied Malphite roughly 3 waves thanks to the tower, and 6 to 7 waves from the freeze alone. Tahm Kench's mid-game begins the moment he gets level 6, or when either top turret goes down, becoming a pseudo jungler for his team. To gank more freely and not get penalized by minion waves crashing into your turret, ask your jungler nicely to come top when the top laner is low or has no teleport, so you can either kill them or force them to recall. Transition that kill or force recall into a tier 2 turret afterwards. If you happen to lose your turret, unless there's a large minion wave about to crash into your tier 1 turret and no one can cover it, it's better to immediately roam to another lane because the enemy top laner will likely do the same once they see you coming to collect the minions. At that point, you have to bank on your team to carry you, since Tahm Kench isn't the best split pusher or fighter when far behind.
Just remember, teamwork, OP.
You should always ping your ultimate cooldown every 15 seconds because Tahm Kench's ultimate indicator is always green even when his ultimate is not up. If you're ahead in lane, you should be ulting mid, counter ganking the enemy jungler, or teleport ganking bot lane, transitioning your own lead into leads for all 3 lanes. Since you get a free Twisted Fate ultimate every 2 minutes, use it to flank mid with the jungler or solo, either to counter gank or gank normally. Ping your ultimate a couple of times, then signal that you're coming in, and hopefully your ally plays around the incoming gank.
I came looking for booty.
If you happen to successfully gank, transition that success into an early mid turret so you and your mid laner can roam afterwards. Rather than teleporting back into lane for minion waves when the jungler or mid laner can easily pick it up, if you happen to see a low health bot lane, go for that ass, since you have the level and number advantage. Using your teleport to kill the enemy bot lane or forcing a recall is always worth it because it nearly guarantees first blood on the turret if your bot lane isn't that behind and if no one else shows up. If you can't take the first turret but your jungler is nearby, transition that teleport gank into further objectives like Inferno Drake before heading out top lane, since you want to make the most out of your roams.
Watch your jet, bro. Watch your jet!
The mid game is where you have to be active the most because Tahm Kench falls off like the average North Korean missile in the late game. You have to do your part and make sure your other laners are ahead since they'll be the ones carrying you after that. Being slightly behind your own laner while making sure your team is ahead is completely fine since Tahm Kench's damage peaks at level 13, so any level past that doesn't matter too much. The worst thing you can do on Tahm Kench is keep hard shoving top lane into a scaling enemy champion like Fiora and squander your early game only to have the scaling champion later one-shot you and your team.
No, sir, please no!
In the late game, Tahm Kench is basically a teleportation bat and a secondary support. By ulting a crowd control heavy teammate behind or into the enemy team, you can easily soak up damage and abilities while providing room for your carries to run the team over. If you really want to make sure your team survives, you can build the Locket of Iron Solari as one of your later items since it synergizes really well with Tahm Kench's large health pool and gives everyone on your team a 2000 shield in the late game. In a team fight, you want to immediately activate Solari the moment a carry is being focused since it can mitigate some of the damage until you are able to reposition them to a safer location. As for repositioning, Tahm Kench can spit carries over small walls, letting them deal damage while staying out of range of the enemy team. However, if one of your carries is caught up by a crowd control but isn't being focused down, save your W for one of your other carries that is actually sustaining damage, or just suppress an enemy carry for that fight. Although Tahm Kench's damage does fall off, another reason why his efficiency drops as the lane progresses is because team fights become more common and 1v1s are rare. Again, Tahm Kench is still really strong in 1v1s if he manages to find a lone enemy and stick onto them. In this game, I saw both Darius and Ziggs mid lane, but Ziggs was pushing out the wave and leaving no CS for Darius. Since Darius was really behind and likely wanted some CS to get back into the game, I predicted Darius would walk to a jungle towards his top lane. Sure enough, I catch out Darius by waiting in the fog of war. We then proceeded to run down top and win the game. Congratulations, you learned how to play Tahm Kench. Here are my runes, masteries, and what items I normally buy. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's the first time I made an educational video, and I appreciate any feedback about how I can make these videos better. If you have any further questions on matchups or how to play versus a specific champion, just comment in the comment section below, and if I have a clip, I'll upload an unlisted video with a link and an explanation. I don't have a quote to end this video at.